All right. Welcome to
Okay.
Pixel by NETSTAIRS weekly event. Good morning. This is Ahmad Moradi. At NETSTAIRS, we focus on what we call ICE. We inform, communicate, and educate our clients and content and partners about various use cases. We believe real-time communication is the genesis of doing business because we all do broadcasting, collaboration, communication, messaging, emails, and so forth. So we believe the foundation of exchange of information and communication becomes important. Today's guest is my colleague, Dr. Luis G. Flores, who is a respected international authority. He had a part one series that, for those of you who missed it, we encourage you to visit again, facebook.com/pixel by NETSTAIRS, and look at that content, or simply send us an email to inquiry@netstairs.com, and we'll send you the link just to make it convenient. Today, Dr. Flores is going to carry on with the part two section of his lecture. The topic of our lecture today is structural problems and effective solution in strategic management. So without further ado, Dr. Flores, the podium is yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending upon where you are. It's a pleasure for me to share this information. This is the content is a presentation that I made to the Association of Strategic Planning annual international conference about 2-3 weeks ago. And this is the second part. And before going into the second part itself, I know that there's people who hadn't seen it, and perhaps there has to be some connectivity between the first and the second. I'm going to spend a few minutes reviewing some things and perhaps emphasizing some things that I didn't emphasize the first time, and then we'll move on and cover the second half. Strategic planning, really, I call it the industry, and I include in the industry the users who are the senior managers and the companies, the consultants, the teaching, and a variety of things that I'm going to share with you. I want to emphasize that there is no commonality in this business of strategic planning. People do different things in different ways, and unfortunately, some companies are being hurt, and some companies are doing well, and the companies that are being hurt do not realize that they are being hurt because they don't know what to expect. But let me go to the major characteristics of this industry. Here, the industry is fragmented. The individuals who are doing strategic planning, as I mentioned to you, learn the things from universities and executive development seminars and things like that. But there is something missing, and I'm going to emphasize the missing a little later. So what happened is that they have developed their own systems, their own processes, and they do things the way they do it by trial and error. But there is not a common concept, a scientific concept that incorporates all the different pieces of strategic planning and presents in a way. That's what I'm going to try to do. Since it is a problematic issue, how the industry is working, it's still evolving, and evolves every day. Academia, by the way, has not helped too much because everybody is focusing on what I call the analysis or the analytical side of strategic planning, but not the organizational planning like it should be. It's diverse also. As I mentioned to you, people do things differently. And finally, which is perhaps the most problematic of everything, is that there are no checks and balances. People just do it, and nobody oversees them, and they can do whatever they want, and they'll keep on going. let me focus on this. These are the problems of strategic planning, and we talked about these problems before. But we talk about the concept of a strategy. In my seminars, I ask them to define a strategy, the participants, and I get many different definitions of this. Customers are a problem because customers, the companies and the CEOs don't know what to expect. They know what the company, the consultant, or the head of planning tells them that this is it, but they don't know what to expect. I have made experiments in my seminars asking them, for example, how many of them hire consultants, and there is a significant group of them that hire consultants. And then my second question is, how many consultants methodologies have you seen? My question is more than one, and nobody, the number of people shrink tremendously. And my third question is, how many of you have seen 3 types of methodologies and you have no one that does? So they don't really make the effort to understand what is strategic planning in itself and make sure that they have 3 or 4, methodologies competing so they can choose the methodology for themselves. The function, companies have a head of strategic planning and a department of strategic planning. But guess what? There's no standards for that either. The head of strategic planning chooses to do, of course, there are certain things that needs to be done, but they are the king or the queens of that department and do what they know. And if you tie that to the fact that everybody's doing things differently, you know what a mess we are into. The consultants are also guilty. People have found that there are problems in organizations. For example, problems of communication. So people from the social sciences have jumped in and started doing consulting and strategic planning, making senior managers talk to each other about the strategy. The problem with that is that if you don't actually force people to think and just letting them talk to each other, they end up agreeing on the lowest possible common denominator. And that is also very questionable for companies. Available training, I'm writing a book. I'm trying to see what is in the market, and I'm getting seminars, brochures from different universities and places. They all focus in what I call the analytical part of strategic planning and not the other part of strategic planning that we're going to be talking about. And the final thing that is in the industry is secrecy. People do not share their knowledge with each other because it's their competitive advantage. They feel that they developed that methodology and they're not going to be giving it away to anybody. Like I won't give it away to anybody either. We can talk concept that a specific methodology is proprietary of the person who has developed it. The second thing I wanted to share with you, I think we did. I guess the valid expectations. For anybody who is doing a strategic planning or hiring somebody to do strategic planning, I put together this slide that is called valid expectations. This is the minimum that you need to require when you are doing strategic planning or when you are hiring somebody to do strategic planning. You have, at the end of the strategic planning, you are supposed to have a very strong sense of purpose. In other words, the whole company should have very clear where they're going and how they're going there. You should have also a very sharp management focus. Not messing around, not very clear again and very sharp in there. Out of the box thinking. Most of you know probably many tools in strategic planning, like the balance scorecard and things like that. The problem with tools is that you have to know how to use them very well. Because if you use tools and you don't use it very well, the only thing you're doing is boxing your thinking in and not allowing for you to go out of those tools and think, in what is called a blue ocean strategy. You need to receive deep commitment. I mean, you need to achieve deep commitment. Everybody very committed to the plan. The plan should be also a catalytic force to get people to team up, because do all decided by themselves where is where the company should go, and if you concluded that the company should go in a given direction, conclude collectively, then everybody wants to go in that direction. And also, it shouldn't be static. It has to be learning and evolutionary, arranging, adapting, changing things. And finally, that plan should be institutionalized. In other words, it has to become part of the organization itself. Moving along, I already shared this, how this methodology was developed. We talk about the idea that I had that in my teachings at the university, that I shouldn't be teaching only about strategic planning. I should be teaching how the students can learn to think strategically. And early in my consulting career, a company was looking for somebody who could do that to them, and they invited me to develop a process to have, a company that was thinking strategically collectively. I mentioned to you that at first I felt very scared because I didn't know what to do at that point. It was a research project. It was like a mini Manhattan project for business. And but they came back and said, okay, we're going to help you. In other words, I did this for people who knew exactly what they wanted, and they came from a very, very prestigious Fortune 500 company. And then I learned that what they wanted was to do what that Fortune 500 company does that nobody knows, because this is a secret. Here we go into the new stuff. The approach to strategic planning has been, what do we do? And what is the final outcome that we should get in terms of a strategic planning? But the final outcome in terms of the content of the planning. In other words, a document that is a strategic planning that we have for that particular organization. I believe that there is some interest, and my process goes right into it, to move from knowing about what the content is to how do you get to that content? Because the content is important, but if you do not involve all the players, the important players in there, you will find resistance to change. You will not get commitment. You will not get, uniform thinking. You will not get strategic thinking and all those kinds of things. So there is something that is missing in a strategic planning that you're going to see what I'm suggesting, and that is moving from a strategic planning only to a strategic planning processes. In other words, how do you do the planning? And how do you do the planning means who participates, what each of them do, a variety of things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And this concept tries to proposes that the dichotomy of the strategy formulation and strategy implementation should not exist. Why do I say that it should not exist? Because they are like the two sides of the same coin. They depend on each other. If you don't formulate the strategy in a way that people will love to follow it, then you have a bad strategy implementation. And And the whole thing really relies or lies on what I call strategic processes in an organization. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But strategy formulation and strategy implementation should go together. The analogy that I use that might be a little simple, but very, very, powerful is think about a zipper. You know, the zipper that you close and open. And think about the little units that are there that join together in a tremendous order and one by one in a sequence that if you actually get the side of the zipper or the outside of the zipper, you get entangled. That's exactly the same thing that happens with a strategy. If you don't know how to get the people to go step by step to develop the strategy, the strategy gets all, could be good at the side, but internally gets all messed up. So we're talking about organizational processes, and this is super important, and that has been one of my expertise teaching at the university. We all know processes, right? I mean, if you're an engineer, it's very easy for you to understand what a process is. I guess if you're an IT person, you know what a process is. But mostly, we see what I call the visual processes or mechanical processes, but you don't actually see the internal organizational processes, how things are done. But let me start by defining what the processes are. And I'm going to read them because there's no way to break this into bullet points. I think this is the best way. Organizational processes are the repetitive patterns of how managers do their analysis, decisions, and actions when managing an organization. Very few people can study this kind of process. You need not only what they teach you at the university, but you need a heck of a lot more. And why I bring in this thing, to talk about? Because they determine how management activities take place, and thus the quality and quantity, or the quantity and quality of the decision outcomes. I mean, if you are able to observe 6 people in a meeting and identify how that works, they're going to be jumping from A to B to C. The information that is there might be partially important, but the rest of the information is in the heads of the people that are there. And they're approaching the problem from their own mental map. And the mental maps are not going to be the same. And so you can imagine, like, I think the analogy that I use is the process allows to organize everything. So the difference between the process and non-processes is the same thing as having fireworks versus having fire in the fireworks factory. And if you can visualize very well what those two things mean, then you will understand what happens in a meeting that is not well run. Okay, they determine how the activities take place and the decisions. Well, then they have a key impact on organizational effectiveness, and they're a source of competitive advantage. The copying one machine or copying, certain this physical process is very simple. You just take somebody from that organization and take it to another organization, or perhaps observe it or whatever. Now, just think about all the mental processes that happen in that organization in terms of information, discussion, meetings, and all that kind of stuff. You will never steal that kind of process. I mean, unless you really have some people who is able to identify those processes and measure and that kind of stuff. So they are a unique type of competitive advantage. And they are the uncopyable competitive advantage. So it's a very strong competitive advantage. Rapid response, quick in doing this, anticipate environment, and all those kinds of things are the result of having good organizational processes, particularly a strategic planning. Okay, what is the fundamental principle here? The fundamental principle is that the strategic planning process should be the most powerful change process in organizations and should be the dominant driving force in organizational strengthening. In organizations like the military or the religion, there is a higher principle that all the members go into that organization considered, like almost, divine, or patriotic. In the army is obviously the country, in religion is God, but in companies is money, and that's not good enough for everybody, So if you can come up with an idea or a center that is supported and loved by everyone, then you have the same situations that you have in the military. People that is willing to die for it. In business, they won't die for it, but they will work harder. That is the idea of what transformative strategic planning is. And the definition, again, allow me to read it, is a methodology that helps management teams produce powerful strategic plans while at the same time developing and enhancing their collective strategic thinking capabilities. I had a student that is now a partner, and Ernst & Young, I believe, and talking with me said, Dr. Flores, I have tried to teach my people to learn how to think strategically for many, many years, and I still can make it, Well, you need a variety of qualities and knowledge to get this kind of thing in people, but this has to be there. It unifies the management team and helps them to achieve consensus, generate commitment, energizes them, and give them a strong self-confidence. We don't want in organizations, those kinds of bureaucrats, and I'm not talking about, the government, I'm talking about the bureaucracy, that are doing their job because they have to do their job, that leave early and sometimes come late and all that kind of stuff. We want people that, or management teams that are in love with their company, And of course, I might be exaggerating a little bit because there's no magic here, but are closer to what I'm saying. They want to be there. They believe in that. And they actually, enjoy what they're doing. It creates a powerful sense of urgency. There is nothing more motivating to do something when you have clarity in the dangers in which you are. Companies many times are moving and moving and moving without realizing that there are some forces on both sides that are going to really shake out the company, Well, think about this. If those forces are there and they are not realizing that they are there, they're going to do much. They're not going to do much, right? What about if, they find out before these forces are there that they are coming and they start preparing for that? Again, the energy of those managers are going to be much more greater when you know that this is going to happen, this danger is going to, become reality. The methodology. The methodology focuses on understanding the mental process of individuals, groups, and organizations to provide methodologies to help them grapple with complex issues, generate powerful solutions, and develop their collective mental maps. The aim here is to have executives with the same mental maps. Now, the same mental maps at the higher level, because they have to be flexibility at the lower level, but at the higher level, the whole company, moves. But at lower level, they have to manage their own organization, their own parts of the organization. So we want people who have certain things in common and they are convinced about those things and have clarity that that's the way to go. The transformative strategic planning methodology also presents an organized and systematic step-by-step strategic thinking, strategic critical thinking process to help managers, board members, and leaders of other types of organizations develop their strategic plan. And this takes place in a 3 to 4 day strategic planning retreat. In all the books that I have seen, all the speeches that I have seen, they try to make things easier. And you see in the social media, 4 steps to do good strategic planning, 3 steps to do strategic planning. And, this is like creating an organism, like a human being or like an animal. And you cannot say, put, hands or eyes, and then you have a human being. No, that doesn't work that way. So the process, the methodology, what it does is to break down complexity into simplicity without taking the complexity. Let me explain this. The complexity is there, but if that complexity, you break it down in smaller pieces and you sequence the smaller pieces and you give methodology for solving each of those pieces in a systematic way, at the end you have solved a very complex process, a very complex problem, in tackling it in step-by-step small pieces. So the complexity is not hurt. This is still there, but you know how to handle it. 1, let's do this, 2, let's do this. And also, of course, has follow-up implementation and control processes. And it doesn't only work for the senior management team, but can be used for the entire organization. What I have observed in running my strategic retreats is that since I give them instructions, look at this, and look at this, and prepare a presentation and do this and do this and do that, the members that are there are exposed to a higher level of methodology in discussing things and presenting things and agreeing on things. They take it with them, and then they utilize it with the rest of the organization, the lower levels of the organization, and the entire organization becomes much more logical, much more based on facts, in processes, in a methodology that everybody can understand and move. But there are a couple of challenges, and I don't think we're going to go much faster than this one, or perhaps the next one. We have to understand the process by which individuals learn things and generate their knowledge before we go into explaining how to solve the problem. And one of the challenges is what I call the informational challenges. We all know there is one reality, and even though sometimes people want to have different realities, but there's one reality. And that reality is absorbed by individuals taking some of the facts and making some assumptions and beliefs. And the facts probably are the same for the facts for one person might be the same facts for the other person. So you get there, you got a problem, right? And they, with that information and their beliefs, they make basic inferences. Inferences mean, visuality or visualizing reality. And they can go to accurate reality or distorted reality and everywhere in between. So if you, as an individual, can interpret reality in a way that you might actually will not get it as reality or will not get the real reality, Imagine if you are dealing with 30 people or with 200 people. It's a mess again. I mean, lots of things. The other thing.
I think at this juncture, Dr. Flores, what we
Okay.
need to do is transfer the knowledge challenge to part 3 with your permission.
Yes.
We are glad and delighted to have you. I think there are a lot of information in knowledge base in ways that people now applying these methodologies into artificial intelligence, such as inference engines, that basically takes those facts and informations and the assumptions and the beliefs that you talked about and builds it into rule-based knowledge solutions. And this knowledge solution basically deals with the references, information that you refer to as accurate reality, and deals with what we call in artificial intelligence fuzzy variables, which is known as distorted reality, because there are certainty factors associated with those. And with that in mind, I'd like to thank you for attending, and we will set up part 3 and introduce the next part of the presentation to our audience. And if you have anything else on this subject, definitely please feel free. Otherwise, we'd like to thank our guests and audience for attending to this session. Thank you, and see you all next week. Dr. Flores?
Thank you very much.